All right, we're back into the show here. We're going to talk a little Eagles 49ers. And I don't want to be hyperbolic here, and it might sound hyperbolic. Maybe the worst loss I remember in a playoff game for a franchise. In terms of just the 49ers are playing with their seventh and eighth linebackers. They're battered and bruised. They haven't had Bosa in forever. They haven't had Warner in forever. Um, they lose Kittle early in the game to an Achilles, and then they have no Ricky Pearsall. They're letting it ride with like Demarcus Robinson and Hughes check on that pivot route all day. McCaffrey is well under 100%, but they're feeding him the rock, and their defense is actually just like duct taped together, and they still find a way to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. And just this is where you just have a lot to say, a lot to be desired from Nick Sirianni, like IUP guy. So, obviously I have like I like the guys as a human, but in terms of and he does have a ring, but I just think ring culture is there's a serious issue when there's not a boy wonder play caller in the building like Shane Steichen or Kellen Moore. And it seems like Hurts regresses after he has Steichen and then 2023 regression. He has Kellen Moore, 2025 regression. So, Duska, I think they did get rid of Petula today, but I mean, just the saddest of playoff exits from and then the microcosm that just spells this out so perfectly is all of the AJ Brown stuff that's been going on all year, just running his mouth, like just cancer in the locker room. This is one thing I think Howie got wrong. I think they should have just got rid of him at the trade deadline and rode with Smitty. Got a couple assets back because Smitty's like a 1B receiver. Like he is a really good receiver. And Goddard's a really good tight end. So plus you have Saquon. I just think they could have got rid of AJ Brown. That's all I would say. But when AJ Brown drops those balls late in the game and you're just like, dude, like you can't just bitch all this time and be just completely horrible for team chemistry. And obviously Jalen Hurts and him do not like each other. That's been known for the past couple of years, but it just seems like there's got to be some strings pulled because I think the Eagles defensive unit, I think the best unit in football got beat in the playoffs last. I think the Eagles defense might have been the best unit in all of football, and they're no longer in the playoffs because the offense just looks like the way it does. Shout out Kyle Shanahan though. You talk about two starkly different coaches. Like you've got Sirianni who has a cupboard full of all pros versus Kyle Shanahan that he's got to make a 5-star meal with pumpkin seeds and A1 sauce and veal, and like he gets it done. He finds a way.
Yeah, I mean, I can go a million directions with this here. There's a lot of parallels between 2023 and 2025. And the reason this loss is worse is because the defense of the 2023 Eagles was so bad that going into the playoffs, it was a foregone conclusion that they were going to lose and exit the way that they did against the Buccaneers. So it wasn't as disappointing because it was so inevitable and it felt like it was going to happen. The reason that this loss is so catastrophic is because everyone knows that Super Bowl windows close really, really quickly. And the Eagles are certainly in a Super Bowl window at the moment. And they have the thing that is the most difficult thing to wrap your head around is one all-time good defense again. Well, not all time, but all time for the Eagles and certainly one of the best units in all of football and definitely capable of being the propeller of a team to winning a championship. And this defense was capable of that. You saw that with the Quinyon Mitchell interception in this game.
Mm.
Unbelievable. Such a good player. What a great pick. And they were able to impact the quarterback, not to the extent that they have been able to in the past, but they impacted Purdy in this game and forced him into bad throws and bad decisions. And the defense did more than enough to be able to win this game. And the offense just let them down, man. You should be able to win against that defense with letting up 23 points. And the pieces are there too. That's the other thing. Is this offense has the capability because it's basically the same exact offense as they had last year. I think they have the exact same starters on offense outside of the right guard position. And Lane Johnson didn't start this game. I know we talked a lot about the Lane Johnson stats of their winning percentage with and without him, but pass protection was not an issue in this game. The offensive
Well,
line
it,
played
it couldn't
really,
have been
really
an
good.
issue because the 49ers don't have any edge rushers. They literally don't have
100%.
any of
It
them.
wasn't, and it was not. The offensive line played great in this game. They
Yes.
ran the ball really well. And ultimately, it comes down to the same thing we've talked about the entire year with the Eagles. And it was the same thing that we highlighted in the preview to this game. It was the passing attack. And I'm not one to place all the blame on one guy. Kevin Patullo has his faults, and when the results of and outcomes just aren't in your favor, then that's you can be a great guy. You can actually be a good football coach. It doesn't matter if the results aren't there. Then there's 100% justification in a team going in a different direction. And I'm not one to ever celebrate a guy losing his job, but it was pretty clear that a divorce was imminent for him if it ended up going the way it was going to. And the Eagles were favorites in this game, but I think there was an expectation and a feeling that something like this was going to happen, and this was going to be the thing that prevented this team from going all the way in a very havable NFC. So I think, but who's the top guy? It's Nick Sirianni, and I love Nick Sirianni. I think he's one of the few coaches that has a really true edge, and you can see that in his team, and he brings it to the table, and his team takes the form of that when they're bought in, and you saw that it can ultimately lead to winning a Super Bowl, which he's done as a head coach. But I think you're right. And I always have a bias in this area towards a play calling head coach. I always think that having that consistency and that ability is always going to give your team a chance. And I think the best example of that is the Rams and what Sean McVay has been able to do with that team, despite them not having the talent level that they've had in the past. And now that they're back to a point where I think they do have a Super Bowl potential contending team and defense, you see the ability that they're able to produce. And McVay's been there throughout, and they've had success and been able to make the playoffs with bad teams. Kyle Shanahan's a good example, too. The 49ers are decimated. They lost George Kittle in this game. Like, they are not what they normally are in terms of talent. And they're still able to string together drives and put up points with an objectively not talented to their standard team and offense. And you see that he's able to produce that to that level. So we can keep talking about it. I have some opinions on some changes that can be should be made after you guys talk out your points too. But
Yeah.
just ultimately, like it's so unbelievably disappointing because we know how Super Bowl windows work, and the Eagles' window is rapidly closing as fast as it was open. So they still have all the pieces that they have. They're going to be able to add some talent through the draft. I think they're going to be able to compete. They just need to find a way because we know Jalen Hurts' deficiencies. We know that post snap, he's not great at working through progression, and that's been the case his entire career. And it's fine. He's a really good quarterback that's very accurate and has the ability to make a lot of big plays with his legs and extend plays. He doesn't do it as much anymore, but he can extend plays and make big plays with his arm and his accuracy and his legs. So if you put him in a position to be able to do that, he's going to be able to produce at a high level for your team. We've seen it happen. We've seen it over the last 5 years when he's in a good position, what they're able to do. Even the Brian Johnson offense, he was able to produce at a high level. The defense was just so bad that team was inevitably going to lose in the playoffs. But
Hey,
he needs to be put in a position to be able to do that. And I think, yes, Kevin Patullo is to blame and he should take some of the blame, but it falls on the top guy too, and the decisions that you're making and not learning from the mistake of internally hiring an offensive coordinator before and seeing how that went. And the same thing applies for the defensive side of the ball because they internally hired Sean Desai in that 2023 season, and it was a complete disaster after having one of the best pass rushes and defense in the NFL the year before. And I just the inability to learn from your mistakes and think things would be different this time is the upsetting part for me because this team is far and away talented enough to be able to win a Super Bowl and they weren't able to capitalize on that this year and it's tough.
hey, I'm gonna tee you up here, Arch. So I'm gonna give you a little soft toss. I in the group chat after the game, I was like, in our group chat, I said, Duska, I'd like to get my record wiped clean on this game because I predicted the Eagles based upon a statistic that Lane Johnson will be playing in the game, and then he wasn't playing in the game. And then Arch was like, it didn't matter unless he was going to play quarterback for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the limitations of Hurts are very easily avoidable. Like you saw him win a Super Bowl. Like he can do it if he has the right scheme, the right offense, and the right system with
That's the most
personnel around
cogent
him.
and actually realistic Jalen Hurts take I've ever heard you give.
Well, because I would never say that he was horrible. I just said that he was not a top he's not a top guy, and that's okay. There's 32 quarterbacks in the NFL, and one of them has to be 32. I'm not saying that's Hurts. He's probably like 16, but it's you have to be
True.
ranked, and that's how stats work. But I think that he is your off like your scheme around him was. I was looking at some advanced stats today and like over the weekend about on the last drive they ran 10 plays and four of them were repeats.
They're four
And
firsts.
then
It was literally just four firsts,
yeah,
which is
and then
not
on
what
their
he does
final
well.
and then their final play, I think in NCAA it's called double ends. I believe it was two streak routes in the from the tight end and the slot receiver, and then two in routes on the outside, and you ran that with the game on the line. You just in the worst part, I believe one of the guys running the seam route was Devontae Smith. So you just took out your like unless and I've never seen Hurts throw a layered seam ball in my life, so I don't think that's going to happen. So
That's
um,
not his game. Never
No.
has
yeah,
been.
and that's exactly like his game is exactly the opposite of what that offensive coordinator called, and I think like what Dusk was talking about, you risk getting like these. You risk whenever you have these head coaches like Sirianni, it's not a play caller. You risk having to hit on your OC hire like every year. The Eagles have had four or five in the last 5 years OCs, and like they hit on two of them. They hit on Steichen, they hit on
Yep.
Moore,
Yep.
and then you had 23 Desai. Is that who they had? Is that who
No,
you guys
no, it was Brian. And so in Jalen
Brian
Hurts'
Johnson, yeah.
NFL career, the only year he's had the same offensive play caller for consecutive years was Shane Steichen in 21 and 22. So it was Steichen. Well, first it was Doug Peterson, and then Sirianni called plays at the beginning of 21. Got immediately booted from that by the front office, and then it moved to Steichen through 21 and then through 22 before he got hired by the Colts. And then it was Brian Johnson in 2023, last year Kellen Moore, and then this year Kevin Patullo.
Yeah, but I think that you like Hurts played horrible in my opinion in this game. Like
I disagree.
he had like a time to up in the pocket of like 4 seconds, which is just like the Niners had virtually no pass rush. And I'm not blaming it on him. He played horrible because of what they made him do. Like his to drop like the lack of creativity, the lack of plays, the lack of basically anything that Hurts did well. It was like they were trying to like expose him. And I feel like in this game, like the Eagles, because like I don't know, like I said, I don't think he's great, but I think you can literally win a Super Bowl with him, and you failed to do that this year. And I think part of that is the offensive play calling and personnel because he's made some good throws to AJ Brown, and that were like will probably be game changing if he comes down with that, and then he drops it, and then don't even mention the y'all's clown head coach chasing him down on the sideline after, but
I
it's
think I mean I would like to talk about solutions, but I think the the Syria it's hard to defend Sirianni sometimes because yes, he's a good coach, and I think a lot of his players really appreciate that, but it's just that it's for me, it's like how do you hire Kevin Patullo? How do you hire a first time play calling? Okay, actually, my brother gave a great analogy for this when we were watching the game. So I don't know if he heard this somewhere else and stole it, but so we all know Formula One, right?
Yep.
And there's a lot of top teams in Formula One. One of them is Ferrari. So he was basically saying, imagine being the leader of Ferrari. Like, say you're the head coach of Ferrari, and you have all these expectations, and the amount of resources you put into your team give you the ability to win the world championship or whatever the equivalent is in F1. And your choice for one of the two drivers that you get on your team is a guy that's never driven an F1 car before. And you just want to throw him out there and put all of the stakes and expectations of your team onto a guy that's never driven an F1 vehicle before. And your expectation of him is to go win a world championship. How could you ever do that in your right mind? And I think it's a perfect analogy for giving the keys to a guy that's never called plays at any level of college, of any level of football before, not high school, not college, not NFL. He's never done it before, and you're taking a Super Bowl capable roster and putting it in his hands and saying, "Go do it, go win a Super Bowl, and I go win a world championship. You're the driver for the F1 team," and I just think it's asinine in my opinion. And you've made the mistake before. And to me, it's like, how do you do that again? And that's the overarching thing for me is like, how is that what you landed on? And it's not completely on Sirianni. Like that was probably a vetted hire, but he still had to go to bat for him. That's his boy, and that was the guy that he was ultimately putting his chips on the table for. So that's like the biggest overarching issue for me. We can get into smaller adjustments I would make, but it's hard to defend that. And I think another important point is that if Nick Sirianni was let go of the Eagles by the Eagles today, would he be picked up by another team to be their head coach next year?
I probably would check to see if the CFL had any openings. No, I don't think anyone would be pounding at the table
Well, dude, but the reason
to
is
hire him.
because the ceiling is so high and the floor is so low. Like he's had two separate instances where he's unable to hire the right guy. He's far too reliant on offensive coordinator um to be successful. Now, solutions. We talked about this earlier. Dude, get AJ Brown the hell out of the organization. I think teams are fine without diva receivers. Diva receivers are some of the most replaceable guys in an organization, especially when you have Devontae Smith on the roster. I love Smitty. He's a Bolitnikoff. He's a Heisman Trophy winner. He's consistently production. The best the offense looked in that game was when the ball went to Smitty. So I think, dude, you give up AJ Brown, you get assets back. I don't even care if it's a first round. Two threes, and like you can get that's two starters because of how good you have Howie Roseman versus the rest of the NFL in terms of GM competence and drafting ability is a huge advantage. So like it might be hyperbole to say like an Eagles third round pick is like another is like bottom tier NFL team's second round picks, but it is simply just he hits and he's really good at the draft. So that's a stark advantage that the Eagles have. So instead of moving AJ Brown next year, or I would move him before the draft, get draft capital, and then go spend that draft capital in terms of picks, whether that's offensive line, receiver, defense, like whatever you want to do. I trust Howie Roseman, however he sees fit to use those puzzle pieces. But I think step one is getting AJ Brown out of the building.
I would agree with
Uh
that.
yeah. I would get behind that. I think for all the reasons you just said. And it's just I mean, we all played football. We were all part of football teams and know the culture of being on a football team and what that entails and everything. And for me, I've never been able to understand a guy that puts himself before the team and is comfortable with having all of the attention and all of the negative press and media be directed in his direction because of lack of targets and then lack of production. It's like if we're winning games, that should never matter. And I know a lot of these receivers hold themselves to a high standard. A lot of NFL receivers hold themselves to a high standard and think that they're entitled to being a big part of an offensive game plan and an offensive scheme, which they probably should be. But when they have a bad game, they're basically and their team wins, they're upset because they feel like they're entitled to whatever it is that they think that their level of work and talent and commitment to the team entails. So for me, it's hard to get behind that, especially when you have a guy that produces just as much as him on the other side of that never says a peep about anything like that. And there's never any drama surrounding him and Devontae Smith. You never hear about him being upset about lack of targets and lack of production.
And by
So
the way, Devontae Smith's numbers are being cut into by AJ Brown.
100%.
So,
And you
like, if
never,
there's anybody that has a gripe that
a
should have a
legitimate
gripe,
gripe.
it's Devontae Smith, and he never says a word. Always a good teammate. Nothing but glowing things from his teammates, from the community, and the guy just gets active. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, you ever hear him bitch? Like, dude, no, guy just gets active.
And it's more important for a football team to have alignment in their culture and goals than it is to have a one particular player on the team. So I think I'd totally be behind getting some draft capital and maybe another player in exchange for AJ Brown. I think that for both sides at this point, it's mutually beneficial for them to part ways and for to just let that drama walk out the door and let all of the negative press and attention that his comments week in and week out, let all of that just pass by and let the culture that I think Nick Sirianni's strong points are his ability to instill a culture and then his players to take that on and make that a part of the team's identity. I think that's a really strong part of what Nick Sirianni's able to do. I don't know if that's as important in the NFL, but he does it at a high level, and you
Yeah.
can see that in his teams. So removing a sore and something that's negatively affecting that his ability to do that from the equation is going to pay a lot of dividends. But I mean, that's not even the biggest adjustment that needs to be made. So
Well, like we gotta move on from the Eagles talk.
yeah.
Although the Eagles talk
Can
is
I say
always
one last thing on the Eagles?
please go.
I'm extremely out on Big Dom, the security guy, just always being on television. I know it's like a random thing, but we do not care about him anymore, and he's always finding his way under the camera. So in 2026, we need to stop that.
Fair enough. Well, he's
Fair,
always next to the head coach, so he's going to be on camera.
Yeah, well,
fair point,
maybe he
Arch.
should
But
go too.
I think let me just put a bow on it because I mean I love this team. I've been an Eagles fan my whole life. So I think that ultimately it's going to come down to their ability to learn from these mistakes. And you saw in 2024, once they corrected the issues of 2023, they were able to do it in one off season and put themselves in a position to win a Super Bowl, which they did. So I'm going to trust that the leadership and the infrastructure they have in place, especially with Howie Roseman, who is probably going to take a more hands-on approach to this hiring process. I think that trust should ultimately come down to them, and they're going to be able to correct this and rectify whatever issues they had this year, whether it's getting rid of AJ Brown. They're going to bring in a new offensive coordinator. Hopefully it's a guy that has experience and has proven that he can do it at a high level in the NFL. And I think they're going to be right back in a position to contend for the NFC next year, and all the pieces are in place. So I have confidence going forward, but I think that being able to learn this is Nick Sirianni's inflection point for his career. Being able to learn from the mistakes of this season are going to set up his future, whether it's with the Eagles or without. And when you look down the road in 5 years, the position he's in is all going to come down to the decisions that he makes this offseason. And I'm excited and I trust that they're going to be able to make the right decisions.